Hello everyone, my name is Andrew.
And my name is Kimberlyn from Sami Planet Exchange.
Today we are talking about something very important but often overlooked. It's called the lasting power of attorney, LPA. And today we have with us Watson. Watson is from 28 Falcon Law Corporation. Thanks for coming and joining us in our podcast today. Well, Watson, we'd like to put the hard question to you. What specifically is LPA, lasting power of attorney?
Okay, thanks Andrew and thanks Kim for having me. The LPA is a legal document and a deed which allows a person who is at least 21 years old, who is the donor, to voluntarily appoint one or more persons called the donee to make decisions and act on his or her behalf if he or she loses mental capacity one day. A donee can be appointed to act in two broad areas, namely personal welfare and/or property and affair matters.
I see. So actually, how does LPA differs from a will?
So, an LPA kicks in when a person who remains alive loses mental capacity. On the other hand, a will only comes into play when the person is already deceased.
Right. So what will happen actually if someone who does not have an LPA in place and loses mental capacity? Because I'm quite worried, I haven't done my LPA.
Okay, you should definitely do it soon. So, if you don't have an LPA and you lose your mental capacity, the typical process is for your loved ones to go through this process called the deputyship. So, the deputyship is a court process where you make the application to court to tell the court why you should act in the place of the person who doesn't have the mental capacity.
I see. So can you actually walk us through some real life scenario where without a LPA or with a LPA actually makes a big difference?
So, in the event where you don't have an LPA, for example, a real life scenario is, for example, the man is the sole breadwinner of the family and his wife is a housewife. And if he loses mental capacity in the years where he's very productive and he's earning a lot of income, his money may be in his own bank account and his wife may only get an allowance from him on a month to month basis. So, in that scenario, if he loses mental capacity, he needs to pay for the bills of the family and he needs to pay for his own medical treatment. And in such scenarios, usually the wife will ask the question, my husband's money should be able to be accessed by me, but why can't I go to the bank to withdraw money from his bank account? So this causes a lot of unnecessary anxiety for people who don't have access to the money for medical treatment as the person or a family member of the person who loses mental capacity. So on the flip side, there are scenarios where with the LPA, the family actually can go through this scenario, this situation in a more smooth manner. So for example, one scenario is a man who has done his LPA, he's the donor. He has appointed his wife and his son as his donees. So he has been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. So over the years, he has already lost his mental capacity. And at some point in his life, he developed stomach cancer. So because he has his LPA done, his wife can help him make decision to treat his stomach cancer, and his son can also use the powers that are granted to him to use the money in his bank account to pay for his medical treatment. So in such a scenario, as you can see, right, the family can go through this situation in a more smooth manner as compared to the first scenario where I mentioned to you.
Yeah. So Andrew, you must really do your LPA first, right?
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Would you like to see me later on to do the LPA?
Yes, for
Yeah.
sure.
Okay. So, Watson, help us to understand what are the steps involved in order to actually create an LPA.
So Andrew, the LPA is actually a very straightforward process. In fact, I always tell people that if they are so minded, they can actually do it within one afternoon. The first step is to go to the OPG, Office of Public Guardian portal, right? OPG is a division within the MSF, right? So after you log into the portal, what you need to do is to appoint your donees. So have a think through, Andrew, who you may want to appoint as your donee or donees. These people can help you act in your best interest in the event that you don't have mental capacity. So after you appoint them, you must make sure that they accept their appointment as donees. So before they click accept, the website will guide them through the list of things that they have to be aware of as donees. So they have to read through and they have to accept their appointment as donee. Once they accept their appointment, you can then visit an LPA certificate issuer to then certify your LPA. After this certification process, we will submit it to the OPG for registration, and within 3 weeks or so, you will get your LPA registered.
I see. So the key thing here is that the person who has been appointed as the donee has to accept. So what happens if the person I appoint doesn't want to accept or did not manage to accept? Will the LPA still be valid?
So after you put in your draft LPA and you choose somebody to appoint, they typically have some time to accept the appointment. So it's not like they have to accept within 1 day or 1 week. They still have some extra time to go through what they need to do before they click accept. So it's still a very straightforward process.
So Kimberly, please remember to accept my appointment later.
Or reject.
All right. Yeah. So what about is there a difference between LPA Form 1 and Form 2?
So Form 1 is the standard form where the MSF has made certain written options where you can make donations of your power. So for example, in the Form 1, if you appoint somebody as your donee to act for you in relation to your personal affair matters, then specifically the Form 1 says that the person that you appoint as donee has the option to help you decide whether to start or refuse medical treatments, including clinical trials. So the option that you have to choose is either yes or no, right? So this is the extent to which Form 1 stipulates what the powers may be. So as you can see, Andrew, it's a very broad-based power that you're granting. So if you have more specific powers or instructions to give to your donees, for example, would you prefer to go to the hospice or go to the hospital to continue medical treatments, right? You have very specific instructions that you may not have mentioned to your family members before. You may want to write it down in your Form 2.
I see. So would you be able to share with us what in your practice, right? What are some of the instances where clients actually comes to you to actually do up a Form 2 LPA versus a Form 1?
So Form 2 LPAs are usually done by people who have more specific instructions or who may think that the Form 1 is insufficiently specific to serve their particular needs. So people who may have multiple businesses, for example, or who may be acting as, for example, a sole director or sole shareholder of their business, right? These people will have questions in their minds as to, if one day I lose my mental capacity, is my company going to be able to continue on a day-to-day basis, right? Who can make decisions on behalf of the company vis-a-vis its customers, vis-a-vis its maybe the lenders, right? So if you have very specific instructions that you may think that the Form 1 is not able to capture, then you would like to consider writing a Form 2 LPA.
Well, thanks for the insight. Well, Kimberly, you know what? I'm going to do a Form 2, appoint you as my LPA, but I'm not going to give you access to my finances and my bank account. I think, does that work for you?
Then what are you going to give me? So I understand you also have kids, right, Andrew?
Yeah.
So does it mean that he should do a Form 2 for his kids? Because his kids are currently going to university. So
Yeah.
is it wise to do a Form 2 for him?
Yeah, so the Form 2 is in a sense more specific. So if you, Andrew, have a very specific wish that, for example, you want your children to be able to get access to your bank account to fund their university education, for example, right? Then you may want to write this wish specifically in a Form 2. Because as it currently stands, the Form 1 only says that you can make cash gifts to people around you. One of the options is that the value of the cash gift is unlimited, provided that the remaining cash can sufficiently financially support you for the rest of your life. Another option is that you can choose the specific amount. For example, you may want to approve cash gifts of up to 20,000 Singapore dollars per calendar year. So as you can see, Andrew, these are very default and basic powers that you may grant to your donees. So there is no option to say that I would like to grant an annual amount of $50,000 per calendar year to my son in the event that he goes to university, right? So if you have a very specific wish that you may want to capture, and you worry that your wishes may not be fulfilled if you don't have the mental capacity, then it would be advisable for you to write your specific wishes in the form too.
So you can write Form 2 to me to give me every month 50,000, right? He can do it for
Andrew
my
can do that.
for my for aesthetic treatment, everything. You can write it in the.
Would you prefer rupiah or pesos? Okay. Well, Watson, how about certificate issuer, right? So I understand that in the OPG website, yes, spell out that you can actually appoint a certificate issuer, so a doctor or someone like yourself, a lawyer. So is there a possibility that someone else who is not a doctor or a lawyer can also be a certificate issuer? Because I do heard of cases that people are telling me that, my financial advisor can be a certificate issuer, and therefore when I go to them to do up the LPA, it's actually totally free.
As far as I'm aware, on the OPG website, it says that a medical practitioner who is accredited, a lawyer, or a psychiatrist, these are the three categories of professionals who can certify LPAs.
I see. Okay, so you see, Andrew wanted to appoint me as a donee, but can he actually appoint me as a donee? Actually, what are the qualities that he should look for when appointing as a donee? Yeah.
So Kim, the answer to that will be that if Andrew fully trusts you to help him act in his best interest, if he loses his mental capacity, then he can consider appointing you as his donee. But if he has concerns as to whether or not you would help him administer his affairs in his best interest, then he should have second thoughts about appointing you. So ultimately, it's a question of how comfortable you are with the person you are appointing as your donee, how much you trust the person to act as your donee. Because in the form, there is no restriction that the donee has to be a family member or a spouse or a sibling, right? There's an option to say that it's a non-family member. So certainly, if Andrew thinks that you'll be the best person to help him, he can do that.
So when people say that they want to appoint you as a donee, it means the person trusts you a lot.
Correct.
So I'm honored.
But the catch is that you must do whatever to my best interest.
Yes.
So you cannot go about spending all the aesthetic treatment on yourself, but you can spend it on me.
Yeah, unless it's Form 2 and you specify. Okay, so what are the common mistakes that people make when appointing a donee, and what is the red flag to watch out when appointing a donee?
So when donors come to me to say that they want to get their LPA certified, I always look at them firstly to ensure that they have the mental capacity to appear before me and to make the donations as to the powers and the authorizations that they are going to give to their donees. So that's what I will look out for. Secondly, I will go through the form that they fill in to read out to them as specifically every of their donation of their powers, to make sure that those powers are indeed the ones that they are comfortable and they understand to give to their donees, and they also understand the impact of their decisions. So the red flag will be when people, like when donors come and ask questions like, does it mean that I will have surrendered my life the moment I sign on the form? So then this person in such a scenario would, to my mind, not be clear enough as to what they are actually signing on that day. So I will take the steps to explain to them. So other red flags will be, what if my wife sells my residential property without the court order and kicks me out of the house after I lose my mental capacity, right? I mean, there is certainly a danger and there's certainly a technical possibility of this happening, but that's why I said Kim earlier that trusting the person as your donee is of utmost importance. So if there's any step at all that even when you're seated in front of the certificate issuer that you are not prepared to give up on, then you can always go back and have a rethink about your powers that you're granting and also who you should be appointing as your donee, and then you can always come back and do up your LPA.
I see. Yeah. So do look for the best donee actually.
Yes,
Yeah.
I definitely will take that heed that advice. Well, Watson, as you can see, just now I mentioned that I want to appoint Kimberly to be my donee. So what if one day I find that she don't treat me well and I decided to change and revoke my LPA? Is that something that's possible?
Yeah, most certainly. So there are many scenarios where people would voluntarily choose to revoke their LPA and to make a new donation to another donee, right? Some scenarios may be that your relationship with Kim today is very good, but at some point relationships have soured, right? Then you may think that maybe Kim's sister may be in a better position to be your donee instead. Then you can revoke your existing LPA and do a new one.
So remember to buy me my morning coffee, otherwise I'll change my LPA. Well, what are the situations that my LPA can actually be challenged?
So if for example somebody claims that you don't have the mental capacity at the point at which you make your LPA, then there's one scenario where your LPA can be challenged. Another scenario that I can think of is a similar scenario, which is to say that after you make the appointment for Kim to be, for example, your donee, then people around you, like your family members, realize that actually Kim is not acting in your best interest, right? So the paramount principle is that the donee must act in the best interest of the donor.
I see. So there's still some avenue for me to do some changes, or even for my family member to step in, right, to
Yes.
seek some resolve for me. Right. So what are the biggest misconception in your practice that you encounter when people come to make an LPA? What is their misconception about how LPA is supposed to be and how does it work?
Yeah. So some people, as I read out to them the powers that they are going to grant to their donees, they will get a shock and they ask me, does it mean that after I sign, I immediately let somebody else have the power to be in charge of my life, to sell my residential property without court approval? Then the answer is no, because as I have mentioned previously, an LPA only kicks in when you lose your mental capacity to make your own decision. So as I go through the form with the donors, I have always to make sure that I repeat the fact that only after you lose your mental capacity, your donee can do this. Only after you lose your mental capacity, somebody else can help you make medical decisions. So I find myself having to continuously repeat the fact that only after you lose your mental capacity.
So remember, it's only after I lose my mental capacity. All right.
And I have to bring him to the doctor to diagnose or
Yes. So in the event that somebody loses their mental capacity, for example, today, Andrew, you lose your mental capacity, it's not immediately that Kim can start administering your affairs. She will have to bring you to see a doctor to get you certified to be mentally incapable of making your own decision. So the doctor will have to do his checks on you to be satisfied that you don't have the mental capacity. Then he will issue you with a certificate, right? Then only with that certificate, Kim can go and approach, for example, the OPG to tell OPG that, hey, I'm Andrew's donee and Andrew has lost mental capacity. Then she will be given the next sets of instructions to then further go to other public institutions or financial institutions to act on your behalf.
I see.
so it'll be a very fast process, is it? To
Yeah.
do everything and plan out for him.
Yeah, this process will be relatively painless as compared to a deputyship. So the deputyship typically takes months to conclude from the start to finish. Takes months, and it's typically also more expensive, right? A deputyship costs anywhere in the range of a few $1,000, whereas the LPA is in the range of tens of dollars or at the most hundreds of dollars. Right?
I
So
see.
time and also money are relatively more painless for the LPA.
So you must really do your LPA first.
Sure, I will do
Yeah.
that fast. But
Yeah.
at the point of time where the LPA is being executed, you need to check also whether is there money in my bank account or not. Yeah, because you can be actually, working to take care of me, but without any financial resources.
Yeah.
Would you like that?
Then that is whereby we have, as a family, we have to fork out, correct? So
Yes.
that's where we have to find your wife and your kids.
Right.
Correct. So yeah, maybe we move on to another question.
Yeah.
Is whereby yeah.
So in Singapore, right, we live in a multiracial society. So what are some of the cultural or emotional barriers that you encounter when people talk about setting up their LPA?
I think for the older generation especially, they may have a certain superstition that if they think about the bad stuff, then there's more likely that the bad stuff may happen, right? So it's like a form of bad manifestation. So a lot of them, they choose to say that I would rather not think about it, and I would rather leave it to whatever, let nature take its course when the time comes, right? So that's also some of the things that people do in delaying making other kinds of personal and health planning, right? For example, buy insurance, right? Writing a will, making a CPF nomination, decide on their funeral proceedings. These are the things that a lot of people may find that they don't want to talk about. So the LPA is also somewhat like that in this category.
I see. I think that's one of the reasons why lately my dad did mention to me that last time in older generation, before they're going to pass on, they'll write a will. So they don't write it so early. But right now, I think we are gaining more awareness that we have to write a will as soon as possible. Correct? And same goes to LPA. We should do a LPA as soon as possible, but not wait till you are mentally incapacitated, then you do an LPA. I think that's the difference between the newer generation and the older generation. So Andrew, I think you falls in the older generation because he haven't done his LPA.
I have done my LPA.
Okay,
Kim has also done an
correct.
LPA.
So he's the
So there's a
one.
generation gap between us.
Yeah, so do faster do your LPA. Okay, so for Andrew wise, maybe to educate Andrew, okay, so how much is the typical cost of doing an LPA, a Form 1 and a Form 2? Yeah.
Okay, so Kim and Andrew, the Form 1 is actually a very, very affordable option. So in the past, the government said that they may collect a registration fee to register your LPA after you submit it through a certificate issuer. So I think from 1st April onwards, the government has said that registration fee is free. There's no registration fee. So the only fee that you're looking at, Andrew, is the fee that you have to pay to the LPA certificate issuer, who will take you through the process of preparing your form and also confirming your instructions in your form and then get it certified. So for a lawyer, typically this range anywhere between $50 and $100. And I think for most doctors as well, it may be a bit more expensive if you go to a psychiatrist, but that's usually not necessary unless a doctor or a lawyer cannot confirm the mental capacity of the donor. Yeah, so actually the true cost that you're looking at is actually one afternoon of your time and at the most maybe around $50 to $100.
I see. But what if he want to do a Form 2? Does he have to go through a lawyer or can we do from a doctor?
Yeah. So for Form 2, Kim, the OPG website states that it must be prepared by a lawyer. So Form 2 is probably going to be a bit more expensive, and how expensive is it will depend on how many sets of instructions you have, right, for your donee. So if Andrew, your affairs, personal affairs or financial affairs are very complex, you have a lot of bank accounts and you have very specific instructions, right? That may add on to the cost of preparation of the LPA, which in turn translates to financial costs.
I see. Okay, so for someone listening today, and especially for Andrew himself, so what is one key question that he have to ask himself when thinking about LPA?
Maybe he should first decide who he wants to appoint. He has to think through specifically what kinds of powers he want to grant to which donee. So, for example, Andrew can actually give his wife the power to make medical decisions for him in relation to his personal welfare, but he can choose to have you, Kim, as the person who manages his property and affairs. So he can actually split up the powers that he's granting to different donees. So there are many permutations still available, even if he only chooses to do Form 1. And if he has considerations of giving even more specific instructions, then it's very much like a will, right? Where you have a lot of assets and a lot of bank accounts and a lot of specific instructions on who to give one painting to or another artifact to, that kind of thing. So these are the things that Andrew can start thinking about.
What if one day I do not want to be his donee? What would happen?
Uh, if you choose not to be his donee, then I think in that scenario, it will mean that the donee is unable or unwilling to act. So if Andrew has only appointed you as his sole donee, then if he doesn't have a replacement donee, it'll be the scenario where it's as if he doesn't have a donee anymore. But if he has joint donees, right, the joint donees can possibly act jointly, that means in consultation with each other or severally to make their own decisions. And separately, if one or both donees cannot act, that means to say if in the scenario that Andrew does not have any remaining donees anymore, he can still appoint a replacement donee, who then he can also specify the powers that he should be giving to them.
So this would be done in one application, the
Yes.
donee and the replacement donee.
Yes.
Okay, I see. Okay, if you could summarize it simply, why is LPA something that anybody should not delay, especially him?
Yeah.
Especially people who just joined the workforce, it's something that they have to do it urgently.
So I think the fundamental rule about human life is that we don't know when our last day is on earth. So likewise, drawing on the same analogy, we don't know when may be the day that we do not have any more mental capacity while we are still alive, right? So that is also another scary thought. So that's one of the key motivations Andrew should really consider when he decides when to make his LPA.
I see. So you do not know when you are mentally incapacitated. So do it now. And especially our government is very good to actually waive for us the application fee. It's good to add up now and do it now. Yeah. So, Ryan, thank you for your time, Watson. It's really an insightful event and our first podcast in Summit Planners Exchange. So, we are hoping to see all of you more. And also, we are also thinking if you would like to do your LPA, do comment or do drop us a DM. We will actually assist you in the whole process. Yeah. So, we will actually assist with Andrew in the whole process as well. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Watson. And,
Thanks, Andrew, and thanks, Kim, for having me.
Thank you so much for
Thank
coming.
you.
Yeah.
Wow.